Welcome to the Lovecars On The Grid podcast, your global motorsport roundup with me, Tiff Needell, and Paul Woodman.
Welcome to Lovecars On The Grid, your global motorsport podcast roundup. It was a busy weekend from all over the world with Max Verstappen cruising to yet another win in Mexico. Calais Robben-Pere, he cruised another win in WRC. Alvaro Bautista, is that how you pronounce it?
Bautista.
I should know by now, shouldn't I? World Superbike, another cruise to victory. However, Liam Lawson failed to claim the Japanese SuperFormula title, and the champion fight rages on in terms of MotoGP, Aussie Supercars and NASCAR. So that's all to come. Plus there's some endurance action that we'll come on to with me, yours truly, Brands Hatch in the EnduroKa 8-hour, 20-minute race, which was absolutely brilliant. But first of all, in the news, somebody was 72 yesterday. And did you have Did you have
72?
Yeah,
72? Who was that?
You wouldn't believe it. You wouldn't believe it.
Had a wonderful day. I felt guilty I wasn't down supporting you at Brands Hatch, but we had the family round. I'm working at Thruxton on Saturday, so I had a day out of which my Thruxton colleagues put my date up in crossed out numbers for everybody to see. They're always good for that. So then after 2 days working, I thought I'll put my feet up, have roast pork, red wine. I was toasting you. I was going on the old timing solutions, checking your lap time, seeing how you were going. I did notice you were 60 laps off the lead. We'll come to that later. You can explain perhaps, but it looked like it was fun. So in between glasses of red wine, I did catch up with your progress.
Well, I'm glad you had a nice day. And many happy returns for the day as well. Let's go straight into Formula One. Unless you got any other news, Tiff, let's go to Formula One.
No real news. I think the big news really to discuss before you get to the race and qualify was the qualifying chaos. You know, this is yet another FIA embarrassment, or it's Formula One, or I don't know who we blame, but something has to be done about this qualifying system. I mean, the trouble is, the analysis is easy. I mean, it's because the cars are so flipping well aero dependent, and because these tyres, which I'll talk about a bit more later, are so critical. All the drivers seem to want about 400 metres of spare road in front of them, you know, and they all want to go out and warm their tyres up in their own manner. So they need all this track space, and because they then put the minimum lap time on to stop them all stopping at the final corner, they've come up with a clever trick. We'll all stop at the end of the pit lane. Now, because apparently there was no rule about that, they couldn't give them all grid penalties. They should have done, because Max, George and Fernando all stopped. And the rule is you mustn't impede someone, but apparently it's not written impeding in the pit lane counts. So the drivers all got let off, which was ridiculous. Why let them off?
It is ridiculous. They shouldn't have been let off, but
no.
Rules are rules.
But then you have to come out with a plan. So this is the trouble, like track limits, and nobody can really come up with the right plan. Because, I would say you could draw lots. So it's the last 10 you go out in an order that is predetermined by drawing lots or by where you qualified in Q2 or something like that. But I worked out that if they all wanted like 400 metres, and they all want to go out, they'd have to be right round the whole circuit. You could only fit about 10 cars with 400-metre gaps. You know, first and foremost, the law must be that once you leave your pit box, you go to pit lane speed limiter and you don't slow down at all. But then, of course, if you all go out in a little bunch, but then you can't slow down on the track to make your gap because there's the minimum lap speed. So there'll be another form of chaos.
Oh, well, I got the solution.
Allow someone.
I got the solution.
What's your solution?
But I agree, you can't allow that. I mean, just the gentlemanly etiquette.
It looks stupid to the public.
Does, the whole thing. You have a Superpole situation. They do it in Caterham racing. So you all go out with there's about a 40-second delay, like you just said, but not the 400 meters. You give almost a minute even with it doesn't matter, and that would make it so exciting. You have one flying.
But you can't. But then you've got to, because you've got the end of the practice session coming up. The first one to go out has got to go out maybe 3 minutes before the end of the session.
I just scrubbed it out.
And then, of course, the track gets quicker. And then, of course, they'll say, well, the last minute the track was faster than when it was through. Oh.
Well, but you could always do whoever gets in. So the final 10 go into the Superpole, and that's in the order that you set your time before you get into there. But
you've got to send them out. You've got to somehow make a rule that they go out with set gaps. How you decide who goes out when is another issue. But you obviously can't let these children obey the reason, the gentleman's agreement, because that all broke down, which is why they brought in the minimum lap time, so you can't slow on the way to the line. And now they're all stopping in the pit lane like children. They all want the best bit of track for me and me only. I don't give a stuff about all my colleagues behind. So, but this tyre business, it was fascinating because we had this, suddenly Ferraris, went quick and were first and second on the grid. And Alexander Albon, that was second fastest in free practice 3, was suddenly nowhere. And there's a brilliant article. You have to go and find it. All you listeners, because I can't quite explain it to you. Mark Hughes, one of the greatest journalists that we have that follows motorsport. He was a motorsport magazine journalist. He's now on wearetherace.com. So he's explained this. So go there, everybody's listening today, before you comment on below. So the point is, it's about the tyres. And apparently the red tyres this weekend were C5s, which is the softest and most critical for temperature. So apparently at 40 degrees centigrade, it changes from being a front limited to a rear limited car thing. So I know, I've read it 3 or 4 times. But basically, above 40 degrees, it favours cars that are front tyre limited, and below it favours cars that are rear tyre limited. So different cars have different handling characteristics. So some cars might have a really good rear end, but they're limited at the front. Now, if you're limited at the front, you need to be above 40 degrees. But if you're limited at the rear, you need to be below 40 degrees. So because the temperature in that qualifying session changed 2 degrees centigrade, it depended so much on whether your car, I didn't know cars were front limited and rear limited. So basically, this is apparently the Red Bull is it's almost equally limited, which is another factor in the brilliant design that makes the Red Bull work so well. But other cars will blow hot and cold. Apparently 40 degrees centigrade is this knife edge. So some cars, if it's below 40, lose performance, and other cars, if it's above 40, gain performance, which is why Ferrari's shot forward and Williams went backwards. I'd give up if I was a racing driver trying to drive for this. Because you've got
that's what you rely on your engineers for, surely.
Well, yeah, but you've got to do it. The tyre pit Pirelli was saying you can heat your front tyres with your front brakes. They all do that, but that heats the carcass up. And they say however much you weave won't do the job because that only heats up the surface of your rear tyres. So in fact, this limitation isn't just it's hard to get the right tyres. But I was fascinated with this fact that some cars are front limited and other cars are rear limited. And that's why amazing. Amazing.
You read it 3 times. You still can't explain it.
You still can't. Read it. Go and see.
We are the race.
It is written. Yeah, go to Twitter and it gives a link if you go on the We Are the Race Twitter with Mark Hughes. But actually, before we get to qualifying, we have to look at FP1, where 4 young stars had their debut in a Grand Prix car at a Grand Prix meeting, as they have to, these young drivers. And it was brilliant because none of them crashed and all this. And we can't use novice drivers; they'll crash our cars. We have to have experienced drivers. Frederic Vesti was out in the Mercedes. Jack Doohan in the Alpine. Isaac Hadjar, the young French Red Bull boy, was out in the Alpha Tauri. And they were all about 1.5 seconds slower than the driver that was in the other car. Hamilton was out in the Mercedes. I'm not sure who was in the Alpine. And obviously it was Ricciardo was out in the Alpha Tauri. They were 1.5 seconds off the regular driver's pace. But our Ollie Behrman, who we've raved about on this podcast for about the last 3 or 4 years, I reckon, since he first came to the Promise, he was 0.2 slower than Hulkenberg in the pass and did the most amazing job. He came through those real high-speed S's on his first attempt to the quali lap and on his red soft tyres, and he got a big slide on. And it's often these Grand Prix cars, they overcorrect, don't they? They spin the wrong way. But he just caught this slide and continued on. Like he'd been doing it for donkey's years. It wasn't a quick lap, or he then had to do another lap. Yeah. To be fair to Hulkenberg apparently didn't have the best of laps on his. So although Ollie was 0.24 slower, but he's 18 years old. I'm not. Wow. And again, I don't want to encourage them to get into Formula 1 too soon, because as soon as Ollie Behrman's in Formula 1, that'll be another seat taken for the next 15 years. But I do think I think Ferrari have got the mind on him for 25. I think he's going to go back to Formula. The trouble is, he's going back to Formula 2. where he's going to face this Anto, the guy we talked about last week, who's only 17, that's been rushed up the Ferrari platform, and he's missing out on Formula 3. So the trouble is, if you go back, if you stay in Formula 2 for another year, some even more brilliant young kid might come and blow your doors off. But Ollie was, so impressive and being interviewed afterwards. So well done, Ollie Bear.
He's very mature, isn't he?
Yeah, chats away like a king. He's 6'2", which surprised me.
Oh, I didn't know that.
When he's being interviewed, which is nowadays, these cars are at least made for taller drivers, which they certainly weren't in my day. So where were we? So then back to the real meeting. But congratulations to all those rookies that impressed so much by going out there. But it was a weird qualifying. I've now explained why the Ferraris hopefully surprised everybody. They surprised themselves. They didn't really know.
There were a lot of surprises, not just the Ferraris.
Well, going down, I know Max, of course, was then third. So that was, okay, so Max. And then in fourth place, I'm just reading the name now, forgotten. It's some bloke called an Aussie, a young Aussie, Daniel Ricciardo. But it's not Ricciardo, it's Ricciardo. Where did that? Funny enough, he was helped, although in the end of the story, he wasn't helped because Yuki Tsunoda had an engine change, so he was going to qualify last anyway. And in Q1 and Q2, he towed Daniel round. So they did a bit of team help. And yet, Yuki didn't make the top 10. So the time that Daniel did for quali was him all on his own, an incredible lap time. And obviously, Alpha time was good. Obviously, it was front limited or maybe it's really, I don't know which limited the Alpha Tauri was. But obviously, the temperature suited. But I mean, still, you can't take it away. Amazing. Fourth on the grid. Sergio having a better weekend until we'll come to that later. He was only 0.15 slower than Max for fifth on the grid. So he had a good quali.
He was desperate to win, wasn't he? Desperate.
Well, I will come to that word in a minute, the word you've just used, which I agree with. Lewis on top again at Mercedes. George is going through a real downer, isn't he? Because, about 4 races ago.
Is George going on a real downer or is Lewis on a real upper?
Well, maybe Lewis is getting in a really good mood. I mean, he come to the race, his move on Leclerc proves he's still got the determination to overtake what may. Lando, a bit off weekend, really. Not Lando, Piastri a bit off slower, but Lando completely cocked up. He didn't get out, and then when he did get out...
That wasn't Lando cocking up. I think that was more team cocking up in terms of McLaren strategy and getting him out. And
he never blames Lando's very good.
And there was a yellow
blame,
flag,
doesn't he? Yeah, Lando does take the blame because he says it's all me. I'm just sorry, everybody. I have my one lap, and there is a lot of pressure when you've got one lap to get the time. And he ended up 17th or something, incredibly way down.
Yeah, there was a yellow flag, wasn't there? Sector 1, I think. So But McLaren not as fast, whatever. Although in the race they seemed to move forward. And then this funny thing that's happened a couple of times before this year, all of a sudden, who was 9th and 10th? Bottas and Zhao in Alfa Romeo. You think, well, where did that come from? And then, as we'll see when we talk about the race, they did the normal Alfa Romeo, and they occasionally come to the front, and then they just do nothing. But Alex Albon, second in free practice 3, 9th in Q1, 14th in Q2. Gutted, I'm sure he must have been thinking this is my weekend. And then his tyres weren't limited and the temperature wasn't right. So exciting looking grid. We all hoped that, Max might get held at bay and we'd have a bit more of a race. But then we did have a race, but the race lasted until the first corner. What a start, the Red Bulls. The Red Bulls haven't had the best of starts. God, that takeoff. I mean, he was between, there was fabulous 3 wide, and all of a sudden there's Checo down the outside. Come on, Checo!
I'm going to win the Grand Prix. Now, we all know what happened. He turned in, Leclerc and Max inside him, he couldn't go, and so Checo turned in and went over the top of the front wheel of Leclerc. Now, afterwards, a lot of the pundits and certainly Red Bull said, well, this was his home Grand Prix, and I had a chance to win my home Grand Prix. I like the way Max, funny enough, turned it around slightly. Yeah, Checo, he had a chance to be on the podium. Yeah. He didn't say he had a chance to win the Grand Prix because obviously Max was going to win the Grand Prix. But again, so the question is, you were desperate, and it's sort of like all the pundits afterwards. Was it brave, as some people like to say, or was it desperate? Now, I used the desperate word, as you just did with Lewis, when he did it to George in Qatar. And I'm sorry, it was a desperate move. I don't think,
Of course it
you
was.
could go in that deep.
Nothing brave about that. Of course it was.
It was brave.
Desperate.
He wanted to be on the podium in his home Grand Prix and win it.
Desperate measures.
But they've got so little peripheral vision. This is the problem with bloody cars. So he didn't really know where Leclerc was.
He did because he was gaining so much. If you look at the footage, he was gaining so much, so he knew he was there.
But he got ahead of him. We did get ahead of him by half a length. So I think he thought Leclerc would break out of it early. But I think Leclerc braked late because he was trying to go around Max. But anyway, poor old Checo. There were fights in the grandstand I've seen on Twitter today. Only one or two, but I think there were some Red Bull people punching Ferrari people after the opening lap. But it was a shame for us and the race and everything else. It was a shame that Max made such a good start and disappeared. Shame, the crowd and everybody,
Look, I've been very vocal. I think Checo has to go. I think the seat has to go to somebody else more deserving. However, I would have loved to have seen him do well at his home crowd. There's nothing better than thousands of people cheering on the home driver.
They're such enthusiastic crowd.
Yeah,
that's the thing. The Mexicans go wild. So every lap they cheer him. In the races in the past, they just cheered him on every lap when he's doing well.
And I feel sorry for him because if he was with any other driver, he would look very good. But he's with probably the best on the grid. But there you go. So poor old Checo out on turn one.
Yeah. Meanwhile, there was Danny Ricciardo going, "Oh, mate, that's a shame. Checo's fucked up again. Oh, I wonder what that might mean." Yeah. Well, if I do a good race now, and Checo's fucked up, hasn't he? Christian, because he had an amazing. I think that the restart didn't help Daniel because he ended up seventh. He was holding a strong fourth for most of the race, wasn't he? And then Lewis had a really strong race to get through to second. The Ferraris dropped off the pace a bit. Tyres probably the wrong degradation, all that boring stuff. Lando, brilliant, from 17th to 5th. But, at the end of the race, he sort of, but I should have been podium. It's all my fault. I let the team down. Oh. I like drivers. I know he's probably over-punishing himself, but I don't mind that at all. But Oscar Piastri didn't seem to be going forwards very well. He had a quiet race.
He did.
Lando caught him up and went by and he was let by. Team orders. Yeah,
but he was flying.
Lando thanked him for letting him. I know he couldn't. Oscar's a very honest guy and drive as well. I think if Oscar thinks he has a chance to stay ahead of Lando, he'll barge through and he'll say, "No, I'm as quick as him. Stay behind me, mate."
He had a bit of argy-bargy with Yuki. Oscar, did you see that?
Yeah, Oscar was good. It was who else was batting with Oscar? It was Yuki at the end. Yeah, poor Yuki. I felt sorry for Yuki. Again, the word desperate reappears because Yuki had to start at the back because of his engine. And a fabulous race because obviously AlphaTauri was a quick car. And he caught Oscar and he can see Daniel, ahead of his teammate, teammates ahead of me. So he was getting more and more pushed because the DRS didn't work very well, which is quite nice. It wasn't a drive-by. I mean, Max did a drive-by, but then again, you forget that he had new tyres on. He had extra traction through that long accelerating right-hander that starts the straight because that's the combination you need. You've got to have tyre advantage for the traction and then the DRS. So overtaking was not easy. And certainly Yuki was getting fed up with Oscar and eventually went for the round the outside and turned in and did the same trick and took himself out, which is a shame. But of course, we had the K-Mag huge shunt in the middle of the race, the red flag. And Martin Brundle, I mean, he's great. I mean, I love his pit walks. He's so knowledgeable. He's a brilliant presenter. But there are times he always says things with this incredibly self-confident, I know exactly what happened there. The rear tyre went, see on the curb, and me and Harry at home again. It's the left. It's the left. It was the left wheel that turned in at an acute accident and sent poor old K-Mag. Big shunt that was, flipping hell. And apparently,
that was a huge shunt. It was a rear suspension in the end, wasn't it?
But it melted. The heat of the bloody brakes got so hot.
How quickly that car stopped from that corner into the barrier. Whoa, that was scary. But the only person that complained about it, so all the drivers were asking, was he okay? Is everything okay? And Max saying, we don't need a red flag. We don't. Max is the only one that complained about it. He said, that's a joke. Red flag for what? I saw the car was a bit on fire, but it's already all cleared. So
it's the barrier repairing. It's the barrier repairing, and that's the red flag is mainly needed for that.
Red flags are horrible when you're leading a race and you've got to go through the whole.
What about restarts? Because the Needell household thumbs down standing restarts. Look stupid. What hell's going on? Your opinion on the standing start restarts?
Well, I think it's unfair. I think it's unfair to go through all that again, especially for the
rolling start, a proper pace car restart.
Yeah, I think
okay,
under a safety car.
Vote below, comment. You never comment, you lot. Anyway, I don't know why we don't get more comments. You're a miserable lot. We always say comment below. We're trying to get you involved. Don't
discourage the 500 or so people that actually listen to bugger off and not listen and call them a miserable lot. They're a lovely
Get a debate going. Lovely
bunch of people.
Good race for Alex Albon, got through to 9th. Good race for Logan Sargent, who was really battling and feisty. Lance Stroll, yet again, he's done this in the past. Moved on Logan under braking. It happened and he reported it, but then Logan broke down for something to add another miserable, Aston Martin looked like they'd changed their floor back again. Where was the last race? Because the race, they both came forwards, didn't they?
They were so strong at the beginning of the year, weren't they? It was incredible.
But they were strong at the last race when they changed their floors overnight start. And then now they're just rubbish and both broke down, got nowhere. And yes, the Alfa Romeos, they finished 14th and 15th, last from all this qualifying top 10. So there's a lot of good racing going on. There's bits and pieces, especially the Logan Sargent, the Alphas, and Hulkenberg. The Hulkenberg had a DRS train going. So I'll give it a good 8 out of 10 for entertainment. I thought it was a good Grand Prix.
And the circuit, what we give that? The track?
8 out of 10. Good racing circuit. Brilliant. It's a shame that it's the silly fiddly bit through the stadium. But,
brilliant crowd as well. And,
great atmosphere.
Last question to you. Who's going to come second in the Drivers' Championship?
Lewis. Sorry, Gary.
20 points behind. 20 points behind, but Gary.
He should have already been in second, really. Right. 2 races, disqualified and crashed.
Yep. Good.
So that all goes forward to Brazil next weekend. We'll mention that at the end of the day, but even now saying looking forward to Brazil. World Rally Championship, Kalle Rovanperä cruised to his second title. It wasn't a cruise all weekend. It wasn't until Saturday when the only challenger, his teammate in the Toyota team, Elfyn Evans, parked in the garage backwards. So Kalle then, once he got the championship, he only had to finish ahead of Elfyn to win it anyway. And once Elfyn was gone, he cruised round and dropped back to finish second overall, I think, at the end of the rally. But poor old Elfyn, he's been I was thinking about this when I was writing his notes. Can you say he's been a bridesmaid again for the 3rd time running? Or I'm not allowed to use that terminology. You think that's yet another banned word, a bridesmaid, inferring to the bridesmaid being second best.
We don't get enough people to be offended, I don't think.
So no, poor Elfyn, a bridesmaid then for the 3rd year running, whatever it was. And
he's just not. There's that max level, and then there's the next kind of level.
Yeah,
I still think Lewis is there in terms of levels with Max, but he just hasn't had the car. But
Elfyn's not quite. Kalle Rovanperä is just this mercurial kid. It was this Central Europe first time they'd run this rally in Germany, Czech Republic, I think.
It's all
Germany,
tarmac, wasn't it?
Yeah, very wet and slippy and slimy. It was tricky.
I was watching it in the garage because Rob Barnett from Race Logic V-Box, the team I was in, he's the reigning champion of the, I think, 1.1 litre or something in the UK, rally champion. And he's
a rally man.
Yeah, he's just about to, he's circuit and rally, but he's been doing rally recently because it's a bit more affordable. And he's just about to retain that title for a 2nd year running. So well done, Rob.
A weird rally though, going through 3 countries. Must be a first retirement. Some poor guy got banned by the German police because his registration number was wrong or something.
No,
he had to retire from the rally. It wouldn't let him go any German. He came out of the Czech Republic.
No,
very slippy. It was very slippy. It was wet. Who did we lose? We lost Eskapaka Lappi. He was one of the few to go out, hit the tree. He's a shame for him. It might be his last rally for Hyundai because Ott Tanak's coming back from Ford to take his seat. And they run 3 or 4 cars sometimes, so Lappi might have a future Hyundai. But Thierry Neuville won the rallies of Tarmac Expert. He loves the tarmac. Ott Tanak in his penultimate run with Ford, because of course he's going to Hyundai, finished 3rd. But it was a pretty stretched out field, Thierry Neuville was about a minute ahead of Tanak and Rovanperä. They're all stretched out. WRC 2 championship was won by Mickelson because we had
isn't he a golfer?
Gus Greensmith was trying to. Andreas Mickelson. The what? Is he what? Oh, golfer. Phil's brother. He claimed that after Gus Greensmith, he could only get 4th. He had a puncture, he had engine problems for old Gus. He was challenging hard to Andreas, but couldn't quite make it. So Mickelson's so 2 champions crowned in the World Rally Championship, one round to go in Japan in a few weeks' time.
Well, that's a lovely link there to Japan, isn't it? For the Superformula, Liam Lawson.
One more in between. I had another link in between now.
Amateur.
Oh, yeah, I ruined that. Because, well, I'm just finishing the last one that also won a title, you see, because this was a win-win-win before we go to the lose-lose-lose.
Okay.
So it's only a one-line, because Bautista did claim his second World Superbike title on the trot, same as Rovanpera, with 3 wins down in the last weekend at Jerez, with the championship runners-up being Toprak Razgatlioglu and then Jonathan Ray, the same old 3, but Bautista on top. Who I can't think of anything to Japan because he's not in a Japanese motorbike. I can't think of link at all. Toprak, of course, Toprak Razgatlioglu, who was on a Japanese Yamaha after his second. Yes, over in Japan, Liam Lawson, not a good weekend for Liam. I bet he was. What time in the day would have been watching Formula One qualifying and going, shit. When Ricardo qualifying in Mexico would have been on like a Saturday evening, which would have been, I think that'd been middle of the morning on Sunday. But whatever, I don't think Liam would have enjoyed watching qualify.
So, how many races did he miss for standing in for?
He didn't miss any of the rounds.
He did
the whole round, but he missed the championship by. He had a 6th and a 2nd, and he missed the championship by about 6 points, I think. And he held on to second by half a point. So close.
He's a star of the future, but who did win it?
Ritomo Hosor. I'll try to get my Japanese language go. First Toyota win since 2019. So the Tom's Toyota, which is the factory drive I drove for Tom's Toyota in the World Sports Car Championship. So there's a link there between me and the Ritomo Miyata-san. Put a bit of san on the end. Big shunt. There was 2 races, Saturday and Sunday. Huge shunt, 130R. A couple of them tried to go around 130R side by side. Massive crash. One of the cars went over the barrier, then ended up almost down at the corner behind the corner. But all drivers survived okay. Check up at hospital. So no joy for Liam Lawson at all, not just Superformula.
He's a star of the future. He's going to be in Formula One, hopefully sooner rather than later.
Well, I suppose he would have said, also have been saying, but Checo gets kicked out and then Ricardo goes up and then I'm in again. So still some hope for Liam to be on the Grand Prix grid next year.
Yep, absolutely.
So then we go to all the title fights that aren't settled. They're still going into the season end. MotoGP, yet again, wonderfully entertaining. Thailand, the Thailand Grand Prix. This battle that's going on at the moment between Jorge Martin and the satellite Ducati and the factory Ducati of Pecco Bagnaia. Martin, he just won another dominated sprint race. He's on pole, quickest. He seems to be the quickest rider. But, of course, he fell off in Indonesia or somewhere. And then, of course, he had the wrong tyre choice in Australia. So he's had a bad couple of Grand Prix. Won the sprint race easy to get some point. Bagnaia down in 7th. But then we had this awesome Grand Prix. Yes, I mean, the battle's going on throughout the field, but it was really the front 3 we looked at. Because, again, Martin leapt off into the lead, like he's going to dominate. Everyone worried about tyres. Yet again, a bit of tyre conservation. Very hot again in Thailand. And he was gradually hauled in by Brad Binder, who was having an epic race on the KTM. They got a new carbon fibre chassis on that, which he's enjoying, so that the bike's handling better. He caught Martin first, and then him dicing for the lead helped Bagnaia catch up. So we now had 3 bikes, 2 of them going for the world title with Brad Binder, the troublemaker, in the middle. There's a great battle between the VR46 Ducati's Bezzecchi and his teammate, what's his name? Forget his name. They were a great battle. But it built up, and Binder got into the lead eventually, but not for long. He's got this huge toothy grin, and the interview afterwards, he's joked about he got in the lead, but then as soon as you're in the lead, he realised he'd completely stuffed his tyres with all the effort he made. So Martin got back, but by now Bagnaia, who'd also saved his tyres, was sniffing around, thinking maybe I could do it. And I think it was on the penultimate lap. He went by them both down the outside into the last corner, and actually got the lead by about half a wheel before he found he couldn't turn in because the other 2 were still. They were racing like Moto3 boys, there's 3 of them. So it was a fabulous result. And again, Martin won it in the end. Sadly, Brad Binder touched a bit of green paint on his last lap, which gave him a track limits penalty. So he had to give up his second place. So, which is nice for Bagnaia because he inherited second place and a few more points. Fourth was Azed Bisecchi, one of the Valentino Rossi's team's satellite Ducatis. Fifth, a good battle for fifth. There was another great battle. We didn't see much of it between the two former champions, Quartararo and the Yamaha, that's been a bit slow this year, and Marc Marquez and Honda. Both have had awful seasons. We had a good battle to be fifth and sixth. So really entertaining. Funny track, very flat, wide open circuit, fast and flowing, quite unusual for motorbikes. Moto2 dull. It's been a bit dull for a while now, as Pedro Acosta's pretty much wrapped up the title. He finished second. The Spaniard Fermin Aldeguer came back. He's won a couple this year. He had another win, walked away with it easily. Biggest excitement for the home crowd was their Thai rider, Chantra, came third. So home crowd, a bit like Perez, they were cheering every lap. You know, the home boy doing well.
Brilliant.
The Brits, Jake Dixon, had a horrendous shunt. It was really weird. I forget who he hit. He was just going into a really fast corner, and he suddenly sort of seemed to stop braking and started going for a gap that was closing. As Ayrton Senna, don't believe everything Ayrton Senna says, because if the bloody gap's closing when you get there. So Jake, he just closed in so much quicker, didn't seem to be able to back out of the gap that was closing. So he hit this other bike and he just catapulted him over the top, high in the air. He landed on he's had a big shoulder problem that's already damaged, so I hope he'll be able to fit to finish the season off.
Every amateur racing driver that I've ever heard and ever seen on Instagram that has a crash quotes that Ayrton Senna quote.
The worst thing Senna ever said. The worst thing he ever said. Sam Lowes has been a bit off the pace this year. 14th. Sam Lowes not really on the pace in Moto2. Then we had the Moto3 kids, though. Fantastic entertainment. All a bit tense at the top. We had these three riders. It's the two Spaniards, Jaime Macia and Daniel Holgado, that had sandwiched the Japanese kid Ayuma Sasaki in the middle. And they've been within 3 points of each other about the last 3 or 4 rounds, so it was all building up to another great race. There was a disaster. Poor Sasaki. He had a bike in front of the bike in front of him suddenly cut out. And the bloke in front of him jinked out, and Sasaki just went to the back of him. An end of his race, so he had a terrible time.
Do you know
when
what?
He fell off,
do you know what? Let me tell you, a really good mate of mine who I respect massively told me a disaster in commentary.
Oh, I know. That was me, probably, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was you. A disaster is a
I know it's a flood that kills human young.
Not your race.
What word can we use then? I don't know what can we tone down disaster. Had a jolly bad day. Yes. Disappointing day.
Very disappointed.
But also it held up Holgado, the other Spanish points in the championship, because Sasaki fell in front of him. So Holgado dropped to 24th. Had an incredible fight back to finish 6th, so he got a few points. Jaime Macia led for a while, but he couldn't hang on at the front. He only finished 4th, so he's now stretched out his championship lead by a few points. But interesting, this Colombian kid we've talked about, this sensational, stunning new David Alonso, the first Colombian man to win a moto race of any type, I think. He suddenly got up to 3rd. In fact, he's equal on points to Holgado now. So he's now 4th in the championship.
Wow.
And everyone's thinking, whoa, this Colombian kid, that would be, if he comes through to win the championship, it will be a sensation. I think we've got 3 left. We have 3 rounds to go. And this complete rookie, David Alonso, could actually steal the joys from the 2 Spaniards and the Japanese. So that's a really brilliant battle that's going to go and go and go. But Alonso
down to the wire.
One of the last lap. Alonso seems incredibly good at doing the right thing on the last lap and getting the leads from these pack of lunatic young kids.
Does he manage his tyres well? Is that what he does and just sort of pounces at the end? I've seen a few.
I don't know. He just got incredibly clever brain on a very young head. You know, racing tactics and where to be and where to place your bike. The Brit boys had no go. I don't know where they finished in the end. I've given up on them. Sorry,
but he hasn't given up on them.
No, not completely.
Up on them, just in terms of.
I'm waiting for them to be up the front again. Shame, because the Vision Track boys are doing such a good effort to make them get up the grid. But I'm not sure where they finished. Should have checked it out. Didn't. Because there was so much going on as we're now running into, running late. People don't mind an hour, do they? Aussie Supercars. We keep on going around. Where did we go from around the world? We went from Japan to Thailand, and then we're going down to Australia.
Mexico,
the round of the supercars. The Fords finally got their aero update, because this has been going on all along between the Mustangs, the Camaros, And the Ford boys have been wanting more aero tweaks, had a rear wing tweak and a side skirt tweak, and promptly won the 2 races. So, I mean, it was very close. So it shows tiny things, but there's a race on the Saturday, race on the Sunday. Saturday's race was run by Cam Waters in a Ford and Sunday by David Reynolds in a Ford. But the championship's really between the 2 Holden boys, Kostecki and Van Gisbergen. Big Gergen. There was a bit Berger in the end, yeah, Van Gisbergen. And Shane finished out a 2nd and a 5th. But they left Surfers Paradise where the race was. Fantastic street track. They're still on the same points. Nobody gained any points on each other. And Shane's now 131 points behind Brody Kostecki, but there's about 300 points available. And they head to Adelaide in 3 weeks' time for their title decider before Shane, of course, heads to NASCAR next year. And talking of NASCAR, that was a good link. See, got that one. Go. As you know, I know you're on tenterhooks to know the final, the 8th, that we're going to go down to 4 for next weekend's grand finale, when just the 4 drivers, the fastest or the leading position of the Fast 4 in Phoenix next weekend, will be the champion. We already, of course, had Kyle Larson and Timothy Bell through because they both won races, 2 slots left. There's a fabulous race between Denny Hamlin and Ryan Blaney. Also Martin Truex Jr., 2 Fords, Hamlin and Truex, big star drivers. But Truex went speed penalty, too fast in pit lane, put him at the back. So that pretty much put him out of the race. Then Denny Hamlin had to win, whereas Ryan Blaney was better on points than Hamlin. But Blaney eventually, they were going round side by side for like 10 laps on the trot at times, trying to overtake and not overtake. But eventually Blaney pulled out, got the lead and won the race. So that he was the 3rd one through. But even then the tension wasn't over because Hamlin had to equal the points of William Barham, because now it's places. So Barham, the whole Chevrolet team were rubbish because Kyle Larson finished 6th, I think. But they had a bad weekend. The Chevrolets weren't on the pace at Martinsville. So Barham was running about 20th, say, for example. And Hamlin was 4th. You got this now, you got the picture. But if Hamlin could gain 4 points on Barham, he would have got through on points.
Yeah.
So basically, if Hamlin had gained 2 places and Barham had lost 2 places in those last laps, he would have been switched around.
That tight?
So, yeah, and it happens like that. As soon as one driver moves up a place, the points gap comes down to 3 or goes out to 5. And it wasn't as tight in the end, as I said, because by the time the last race, it wasn't that great a race, but it was tense all the way through. Plenty of action. And it's good stuff. But now it's all down to Phoenix. So you don't have to win Phoenix. You just have to be the lead.
Road course? Or?
No, oval. A weird oval. So I think it's sort of egg-shaped oval, if I remember rightly. With a funny back straight that's not straight. They're all allowed to shortcut the track. So you've got Formula One boys, don't look at Formula One. So you've got some lines or a curve, and they're allowed to and they go 4 wide. Never seems to give them much of an advantage, bizarrely. But it just looks quite interesting. And the first person past the post of those 4, they might finish 10th, will still be the champion.
Wow.
Doesn't matter who wins, but it's
that's exciting. And it will happen at Phoenix. I didn't realise that's the...
Yeah.
Wow.
So cool. This is why, so many people try to have gimmicks to make championships last the final round because, like the Japanese rally is pretty much a bore now. They won't really care because the championship's over.
I've got a link to the next item. An Indy 500 winner was racing with me last weekend, at the EnduroKa 8-hour, 20 minutes endurance race at Brands Hatch. Who was American?
Do we move from American drivers in where were they? Martinsville?
Le Mans
driver.
Le Mans Porsche factory driver.
Oh, Mr. Tandy, the wonderful Nick Tandy. Now, what a superstar that man is. I mean, he had his own self-funded Formula Ford team, won Formula Ford championships, got into a Porsche. I mean, stunning car control. That man is one of my stars, and I think he ought to get into an LMP car. I think he really ought to be in a prototype. In fact, no, he's in a prototype. He's won Le Mans once. So what am I saying? He's already won Le Mans, hasn't he? Yeah. So
I'm glad about that because I did a little interview with him, and he was saying, "Well, who are you? Where's this going?" He was, and I said, "Well, Nick, we're just supporting the same thing as you here." And I started the interview with, "Yeah, this is Nick Tandy, Le Mans winner." He said, "Yeah," and Indy 500 as well. So really cool. But this is the thing with this enduro car. It doesn't matter whether you're a Le Mans winner, Indy 500 winner, or you're just a club amateur enthusiast. Anyone can race in it, and it was absolutely brilliant.
Why were you there then? Who got you in this seat then for this epic race?
So
this is the Brands Hatch, and we all know it's a Brands Hatch. 8 hour.
So it's a series that goes on through the season. This was the last race of the season. There's one 24-hour race. There's a few 5-hour races. This one was just over 8 hours. I was a guest of Race Logic, who make the V boxes. So you race timing. So. And it was great because no better people than to analyze your data and see how slow you were. I had about half an hour in the car on Thursday, 3 10-minute sessions. One was in the rain and two dry, and I was off the pace. I was a bit demoralized, a bit off the pace.
Front wheel drive. You haven't driven a front wheel drive.
No.
Was it a bit rear wheel steer? How did it feel? A bit nervy, or did it feel relaxed?
Well, I was driving a bit too timidly, really, and then in the race I had 2 hours 20 minutes within my I went out under a safety car. There were 22 safety cars in the whole race.
Were you involved with the safety? Because as I said, I did notice between my glasses red line that you were minus 60 laps. Could you account for any of those?
Well, there were 22 safety cars, and our team were responsible for 3 of those. One on lap 2.
Right. So if you go to the gravel, do they drag you out and let you race again?
They try and do it under yellow flags, but it goes into the nighttime as well. One of the guys had a really innocuous little shunt with someone on clearways and rolled the car.
Well, your car, this is
our car, yeah. So I got in for my stint. I got in the stint early. So the lady, Deb, who's been brilliant all season, she finished her stint early because she didn't feel very well. Then Johnny, who is super quick, he finished his stint early because he had to go to a medical centre. So then I jumped in the car and knock MJN Racing and Moore's Motors. They're knocking all the dents out the car. They're pushing it all back.
Were the wheels all pointing straight then, were they?
Yeah, I tell you, went like a dream, this little bad boy. And then all the windows on the near side were gone. It was pouring with rain. I got out. I'm so happy I got out. It was under safety car for about 25 minutes because there was standing water, like proper puddles, big standing water. So the safety car was about 25 minutes. But the safety car with Ford KA Racing, you're 9/10. You're really on.
I'm just keeping up with it.
I've never known anything like it.
Did you have a radio communication? You can chat with your team. Could you go through your strategy?
I had comms. It was just good just to keep in touch with them. And Ollie, who's on my radio from MJN Racing, what a lovely lad, really good. You know what the type of people these are. They're in the garage, nothing's too much.
Yeah. Oh, no. How much do you think the budget is then to do that for a whole year for KA?
Yeah, good question. So what's a Ford KA cost? Probably a few grand for a good one. You got to find one that's not rusted. Another few grand to get it in race condition with the roll bar and stuff. But then you could do a weekend for easily a couple of grand. And then
what tyres are you on then?
Toyos. They're not. I don't particularly like the tyres. I think Caterham are going to that next year. But
did you have to change them? Did they wear out?
We had a couple of tyre changes as well, and obviously fuel as well. But it was absolutely brilliant. I can't believe what used to happen. So Le Mans 24 hours, for example. There's been many races, but what did they do before computerized timing? How did they? Because you look at the TSL timesheet and there's 234 pages.
Lap chart. My mum used to do it for powerboat racing, and I was her assistant.
234 pages on TSL for every lap and all the timing. How did they used to do that? And that's an 8-hour race. Unbelievable.
I'll tell you how they did it. Someone on a clock, right? And every time a car goes by, they press the clock. Someone next door to them writes down the number of the car as it goes across the line. So one person just sitting there, just going 6, 2, 5, 3, 10, 5, 6, 5. And then they marry the time with the car number and work it all out manually.
But they must miss car numbers. I mean, even if you've got great eyesight.
Because it's on a lap chart. Have you ever seen a proper lap chart? I used to do them with my brother for motorsport. So little square boxes, and you fill in the box and it goes down. So you'll have seen that the number was on the same box to the left, probably. It hasn't overtaken anyone. So you'd see if you'd missed one. It used to be a wonderful art. Now it's just computers, AI.
Yeah. But it's still impressive. And of course, all the TSL guys, it's all, you got to remember these weekends they're full of volunteers.
Well,
The time as
TSL are magnificent. I'm always checking TSL for everything that's going on.
The marshals, of course, as well. Yeah, I'm a big fan of TSL as well. But just there's so many people that you could I'd like to mention and could mention. But I looked this morning at TSL and Calamity, Graves Motorsport, and GM Performance. Those three guys did it with just two drivers. They did over 4 hours.
Kidding me.
No, I'm not.
No,
I know. I did 2 hours 51 of driving, and I was really pleased. There's such nice people at Race Logic.
But how long can you go on a tank full then?
220. So I did 220.
220.
So I did 220, and then right at the end they said, "Paul, would you bring the car back?"
Yeah, the final run.
So I was a real honour, and I was like,
how do they refuel then? You're allowed to self refuel. You've got to go to the garage.
You've got to go outside in the pit lane, and it's all it was refueling was all okay. So I did the last half an hour, and I was in the thick of it. I was moving away because I didn't want to get in the way of the leaders.
Were you quick?
Well, there was a dry line.
Who was the fastest in your car?
Rob was fastest, but in fairness, Johnny didn't get he was out like me, and it was all wet. So we both had about 110 lap times because it was just drying at Graham Hill, a little bit of a dry line at paddock. Everything else was wet and greasy. So Rob went out in the best conditions. And then Deb did another fair play to Deb. She didn't feel very well. She was a bit anxious. She went out in the dark at the end, just before I did, and did a few laps. So she got back into it as well. And then I did the last half an hour. I got probably 3 laps of dry before it started raining again. But there's a dry line only. You're in the dark, dry line only. If you go a foot one way on the line, either way, you're going to crash the car because you're going to spin. And I managed to pit Rob in our team with a 107.7, and he got a 107.8 for the fastest.
You stole your teammate's fastest lap time.
But literally, there were 3 laps because there was safety car.
Well, you must be in traffic all the time, aren't you? Overtaking.
Yeah. And when you see on your Delta, because anyone that knows anything about a V-Box, you see your Delta and you see whether you're up or down on the lap. And I could see my best lap, I was 0.6 down, and then there was this. Oh, you don't think you're going to catch them so quickly, then you catch up this haggle of cars, and then your Delta goes from being 0.6 down, you think yes I'm on it, to being like 2.5 seconds over. It's incredible, really. But I mean, so that was great, and I was surprised there weren't many faster, even though lots of the guys had a big couple of hours.
Did Tandy win then? Was Tandy the winner?
No, they were there for the whole race, Tiff. JTR, they were there the whole race. They had a bit of bad luck. I think a wheel came off because
I saw on Twitter, a bit of a fall off.
If you munch those curbs, you got to take your medicine. And all the top boys were really pounding the curbs. But it was actually brilliant, really, that there was 4.3 seconds between after 8 hours. And 8 hours 20 of driving, there was 4.3 seconds between the winners. And who won?
4.3.
4.3 seconds. My goodness, I haven't got the winners here. I've written all these notes. I haven't got the winners.
So we're not going to congratulate the winners. Well, I'm looking at magazines. I'm trying to work out, thinking of your race you're done, and Epic Club Racing. When's the race for Remembrance? I don't know. It's this weekend. It's probably another week. 10 days time. More likely to be on November the. I don't know. It is.
Yeah.
But it's not on my what's coming. If it's this weekend, good for you up at.
I know a lot of the guys were going up to the race of remembrance. Also, Francis Falconer. So I love Francis. He's the Pagani test driver, amongst other things. He's a good racing driver. Well, his lap time 1 minute 15. What's going on, Francis? But it was, of course, won by Pro Am Racing and Milner, who shared a garage with us, same support team as us. They came in second by 4.3 seconds. So real shame. I think we finished 31st. So we rolled the car. I did go in the gravel once, and Deb went in the gravel as well. So
what did they do about blue flags at night? There must have been just a constant blue light flashing, was there?
It was, and that's the problem. They don't really know who the fast ones are. And who
you can't see, no.
No. So when I did my last stint, I didn't want to be the one that was getting in the way, so I was just moving out of the way, and I just brought the car home. But it was
well done, Paul.
Next year, we're going to do this because it was really good. Me, you, Harry, maybe we get Ben or Nick or some of the guys, but it was absolutely brilliant. And Race Logic said we can use their car as well, but don't break it.
I'm not doing 2.5 hours, all right?
You can be team manager. How about that?
No, I'm going to be driver as well.
All right, perfect. No, look, we both try and champion grassroots motorsport, and I always said Caterham was probably the most affordable, proper racing, but this was really, really, really good. The only thing was, it took me a while. You've got to front-wheel drive car when the back end comes out. You've got to actually gun it and give it more. Yeah, keep on it. Whereas it's just, but once you know that, so going obviously paddock anyway, you've got to commit to it. But going through Surtees, so for anyone who doesn't know, Surtees is a sort of right then left, and then it goes into Clearways, which is
it's a left then right.
Left then right. Surtees. No, you come out of Graham Hill, and then you go right then. Oh yeah, left and right. I only did 2 hours 51 minutes of it yesterday. No wonder that's where I was going wrong. I was going right. Not
what
left.
were you about to tell us anyway?
I was about to say,
Surtees?
Especially when it's wet, you've just got to pin it, and your front wheel, and eventually will grip in, and you'll find a grip. It's horrible.
Maybe I'll stick to just being team manager. Right, what's on this weekend? Brazilian Grand Prix. Brilliant, fabulous. Will always be great racing there. Looking forward to that. World Endurance Championship, we go to Bahrain, and I'm not really sure those desert tracks and flat, no elevation. And I mean, that first corner.
Bahrain has got elevation. It is.
It has. You're right. Yeah. Of course, it dives down that hill. But I'm just thinking the first turn 1, then 2, 3. You know, Formula 1, you go around the outside, but there's a short straight, and then you have to be pincered together because you have to go through single file through 2 and 3. And when you've got this speed differential type of racing, which World Endurance is, it's just going to lead to clashes. And I'm not sure 6 hours around Bahrain. It needs to be like Spa, Road America, wonderful places. Anyway, Bahrain. And of course, the grand NASCAR finale, Sunday night. Get your beers out.
Good stuff. Look forward to it. What time would the Grand Prix be on then? That would be same sort of time as well.
It's going confusing.
Yeah, it's going to be late. So 10-ish as well.
Yeah, they'll both be clashing then. NASCAR and Formula 1.
There we go. On the nose, 1 hour. Thanks for joining, as always, and we'll see you next week.
Cheers.